Welcome to Picking Teams, a podcast that dives into the playbooks of seasoned coaches. I'm your host, Amy Bryant, a 23-year veteran college coach, and my guests hail from the professional, college, and youth ranks. Together, we'll share real stories from our coaching experiences to empower you as parents to be positive forces in your child's sports journey. Our guest today is India Chiles. India is a former All-American and SEC Player of the Year with the University of Tennessee and was invited to the USA Softball Olympic National Team tryout in 2007. Currently, India is the head women's softball coach at Emory University and owner of Slapper Nation, a training company that specializes in teaching slap hitting in a clinic setting. India, thank you so much for being here with us today. I am so thrilled for you to have taken over the softball program at Emory. And you've had quite a career up to this point. Tell us a little bit about your journey through sport.
I am from Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville. We say Louisville when you're from there. We kind of mumble the word, but that is home. That is still home. That's where mom and dad are. And most of my siblings. I grew up playing multiple sports, mainly basketball and softball, but my heart and dedication went to softball. I was recruited to play for the University of Tennessee, so that is where I spent my 4 years. I used to just say that's where I played, but now it's like the transfer portal. People played 4 different schools in their years or 6. So I spent all 4 of my years as a Lady Ball. I left the University of Tennessee. I played 1 year professional. My team was based out of Akron, Ohio. I was also on the USA track, but I suffered a couple pretty big injuries in my senior year. So instead of postponing my surgeries after that final World Series, which we went all the way to the championship game, I went ahead and left Oklahoma City and like 2 days later had surgery to start a year-long process to get back versus delaying 2 months, which would have been the Beijing Olympics, which wasn't guaranteed. I had a completely torn labrum in my shoulder and a completely torn ACL and meniscus in my knee. So was very fortunate and blessed to finish season. But as far as the likelihood of that team, I thought I better just get repaired and then go professional. So I did that, loved it, and then went right into the working world. I studied nursing at the University of Tennessee. So I went right into the neonatal ICU. I worked with the little babies for 7.5 years. I transitioned out of that when my coaches at Tennessee called and asked me to join staff. They'd actually asked a few times and I turned them down, but I thought, okay, like I can always get back in healthcare. Like, let's see what this is about. So I coached at Tennessee for the 2018, 2019 seasons. I enjoyed a lot of it. There were some NCAA legislative changes that kind of strangulated one of my side businesses that was like training and camps and clinics. So I got out of coaching and I went back into healthcare, but on the sales side. So I worked with Johnson & Johnson around the country for the most part. And then went back into athletics, but stayed in sales. So I was the national account manager for BSN Sports, who is the largest sports equipment and apparel distributor in the nation. So I worked with them, and then the athletic director called and had this position to offer. I was actually living in Atlanta at the time. So here I am back in coaching. I'm very happy. I've learned so much about Division III. I think this is my home. I hope this is my forever home. But it was a really good start for a first year at Emory.
Wow. I mean, you have really done a lot of different things. That's crazy.
Yes.
But there's so many parallels between all of your job experiences. I mean, one could say that working with the little babies is very much like working with, your clients, right?
Yeah.
But probably more seriously, your sales job is a lot like what you do recruiting now, right?
It is identical to recruiting, yes.
Now, with your side business, you kind of touched upon this a little bit. First of all, tell us a little bit more about that and what you built there, your camp business.
Yeah, so I actually had 2. One was for speed training in the sport of softball. So we called it Slapper Nation. It was focused and geared towards a small cohort of the game, which is slap hitting. So these are your fast players. For someone who doesn't understand the sport, we just kind of say, if you combine that track sprinter with the softball athlete, that's that's who that is. So I trained slap hitting nationwide, actually, but it was just camps and clinics, a lot of tutorials. I was actually down at the field just before I ran up to my office doing some video for some coaches. It's like all across the country still, I am getting requests to send tutorials and help with this. Can you help me with that? So that is Slapper Nation. It was geared towards training. And then I have a nonprofit, Southeast Championship Training, which I'm actually closing right now, but that was an actual organization. So I took a group from 12 up to 18, and they are now all like committed to play in college. But that was also geared on training, but we actually took them on the travel ball circuit. So the big change with Division One when I was coaching at Tennessee is they changed the age of prospect student athletes, which we call recruits. So as a Division One coach, you could not work with PSAs, prospect student athletes, on a regular basis. So who we had free reign to were the kids that were fifth grade and below. That was not my cohort of kids that I trained. So that took away a pretty substantial chunk of my income. And so I just made the decision to step down and get back into a little bit of a different gear of a career at the time.
Well, it's nice that you're able to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of skill sets, so you've got other options for sure. When you were coaching youth and juniors, how did that compare to coaching these college players?
Yeah, coaching the kids is very similar. I have a lot more say at Emory. When they're, 18 and under, they're still with mom and dad. Mm-hmm. They've got outside trainers. They've got pitching coach who I don't know. They've got catching coach, hitting coach, a coach for every skill that they have. So that was more giving them individual pointers, but the challenge there was getting them to play as a team because they don't know one another. It was a national team. I think my kids came from 8 different states. And so it was, okay, how can we basically keep the coaches watching you? That was always what we worked on. You've got to, if you want to get recruited, you've got to keep them watching your field. You've got to keep it exciting. You've got to look like a college team. Mm-hmm. So that was what we worked at that level. Mom and dad are very much involved, as they should be. Travel ball is very expensive. Mm-hmm. Friends, kind of pivoting to Emory, they are adults now. And so they come in the door at all different levels of maturity, all different levels as far as like what they're able to take on responsibility wise. And so, I'm kind of their parent on campus, right? And I kind of partner with our upperclassmen to help with that. And I don't penalize them. Some of them showed up and they knew how to do everything, right? Mm-hmm. And that is just the environment that they came from. Some show up and they don't know how to do anything, right? So it's a lot of training more, off of the field here. And then as far as on the field, the coaches on my staff are the coaches that they listen to only. So a lot more control on that side of it, of knowing what's going on with them individually.
Makes sense. Tell me a little bit more about this. And this is a common theme that I've heard. And I work with high school student athletes now, and I see it all the time. But when you're saying that they don't know a lot about things, some of them are great, and then others, they just need a lot more molding. Are we talking about executive functioning skills, or what are we, what are you?
Yeah, I mean, it's anything from like time management is a big one, right? It's not as common and exciting today with kids to get a license. Some of them are fully eligible and they just don't want to drive, right? So a lot of kids, mom and dad take them everywhere and they stay with them everywhere, right? Like I would get dropped off at practice and picked up. Or when I could drive, I would drive myself to practice and go home. Kids don't really do that anymore. So we have all of the resources, I believe, that are available to kind of let them leave the nest a little bit. We've got the Life 360, and you can follow follow your kids like a GPS and know where they are at every moment. But parents just aren't letting loose or letting go like they used to. So now if you drop them off at college and they have never been responsible to get themselves from point A to point B on their own, they don't know how to maybe do their own laundry. But a lot of it is there are some of those executive skills, speaking up for themselves, right?
Mhm.
And there's workshops, and it's more than just me as the head coach or assistant coaches that are helping these kids to get there. But they all arrive, they all get there. And like I said, it's not, I don't go into what's right and what's wrong. It is what it is. We all evolve and we change. It's just a matter of getting them all to the same point so that when they do leave and as they go through this program, they're able to stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah, that's good. Well, they're really lucky to have you because I know that there's a lot of coaches, probably myself included, that were a little less patient when a athlete would come in and, struggled getting to practice on time,
Mhm.
struggled making sure their bag was packed, and struggled making sure that they'd eaten snacks on, at the right time so that they could perform to their fullest capacity. So anyways, they're lucky that they have somebody as patient as you. Do you find that parents are willing to really let them go and let you take control? Or are you still seeing some parents, we hear the phrase helicopter parents. Are there still some hovering around?
I think there's still some hovering around, but they have no choice but to let go. Like they don't, my roster is from all over the country, so they can't show up at practice. They have other kids or work or life.
Mhm.
You know, kids more so today identify with their parents as their best friends.
Mhm.
Again, like I think that is cute and that's fine, but that's not, my mom makes sure to let me know I am not your friend, I'm your mother. So they talk to them a lot in FaceTime, and the parents are in the know with what their kid is doing 24/7, right? Um, and that's okay as long as it doesn't interfere with what I am doing. And the parents have been great. I know that, I may say this is the inner circle. I'm sure most of the kids tell their parents everything, but it's fine. The parents, I believe, do a good job of balancing that out and also being very supportive of the system. And that's something that we have like a fall brunch, and that's the first time the parents come in town after our fall game and they meet each other, and we kind of have a meeting with everyone at that time. And those are things that we discuss. It's like, if we're going to be successful, if your kid's going to be successful, we as the boss need your support.
Mhm.
So it's been good. I think the parents are still very involved, but at an appropriate level where it doesn't interfere with our coaching or our softball program.
I love that you have that brunch and you set some clear boundaries, I'm sure, with the parents there, and help them understand your expectations, because it's not intuitive to parents,
Mhm,
This
mhm,
is hard for them too, just as it's hard for the student athlete to leave and not have their parent there. It's hard for the parent who's been that constant source of support for their child to let them go and to know and to trust somebody else to take it from here. So I
mhm,
love that you're educating the parents as well. That's great. If you don't mind sharing with us, and I love asking this question, and
mhm.
I think it helps in educating parents as well. In all your years of coaching and working with kids, maybe not the babies, but what is the most outrageous thing that you've seen a parent do?
Oh gosh. It hasn't affected my coaching. The most outrageous thing I've seen a parent do is their kids' schoolwork at the
Mhm.
collegiate level. And it's something that you find out much later, right? Because they've leaked it to a teammate who's leaked it to a teammate who leaked it to a coach. I would say that's pretty outrageous. And it is kind of like making that connection. As a parent, they're not thinking about this as a job or like career step number one for their kid, right? Like you can't clock in for your child and go to work for them, nor would you want to or expect to. They don't always know the ramifications of their actions, right? I mean, their kids are fully equipped. There's tutors, there's study groups, there's everything here as it is on every college campus. It's just at that level, they just want to be involved. They're still trying to help as much as they can and feel like a parent. But when I've explained that, like, you're not actually helping your child because you can't sit in for that exam for them, which means you're actually putting them at risk of being fired, you know?
Mhm.
And what does that look like? They could fail the class or they're ineligible for their sport because you're thinking you're helping them, but in the real world, you would never overstep that line. This is the real world, like maybe you did that for them in high school, great, but you have got to let go and let them fall sometimes. And they fall, some
Mhm.
harder than others. It's usually the freshmen, but they all get up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. Helping them in those situations is actually hindering them
Yeah.
in the
Mm-hmm.
future. But I have to tell you that I have actually seen parents call employers
Mm-hmm.
because their child's unhappy with something or struggling. That to me is like even more outrageous than them
Yeah.
doing their schoolwork.
Yeah.
It's just like at some point, there has to be a line drawn where it's like, no, you don't step in here. That's it. The other thing that I do see, because I work with, like I said before, high school student athletes with their college applications, parents are battling a little bit on that personal essay in particular because students aren't as strong writers these days, nor are they going to be as strong as an adult who's had many years to practice writing and is just a writer. And the parents step in and they automatically see ways that they can fix and make better. And they get so hyped up about their college options and missing an opportunity and all of that. But the reality is that they need to step back, let their kid write their essays, get into where they get in so that it's an appropriate place for them and they can continue to track along their progression. So to talk about parents in a positive light, share with me a way that a parent has maybe expressed their appreciation to you and maybe touched you in some way, like, or, the most supportive family that you've experienced. Like, how can our parents really, if they can't be there for their kid and they really can't communicate with you that much, how can they support you? What can they do?
Yeah. I involve parents. Like, I don't want to traumatize anyone. I don't want to put trauma on the student athletes. I don't want to traumatize the parents. Like, I accept that they're best friends. I acknowledge it. I accept it. A lot of coaches don't. But again, I believe we all evolve, and that's just the world that we live in. That's the world we recruit in, and that's where these kids are coming from. In fact, when I have a kid, whose parents aren't around as much, it's almost like, is everything okay at home, right? And it's like totally fine. It's just they go to work or something like that. So we have like parent reps as part of our team. So I can't and I won't communicate with all of the parents. Now, if there's something going on that I need to know about that's, your kid's really struggling and you recognize and they're not telling me, sure, we can set up a phone call to talk about that. But just on a regular basis, I do not communicate with the parents. We have a parent rep. We had one last year. This year, we decided to have one per class. We are a younger roster with 0 seniors. So that's 3 parents that will kind of handle all the communication. And we've even started that this summer where those parent reps will, they have a group chat. I have them set up a parent chat. The girls have their own chat. And it's like all of your issues or questions, put them in that chat or reach out to a parent rep, and then they can reach out to our coaching staff to get the information. And I'm just trying to help them to stay connected because, I'm not the big sergeant on a hill, like barking down orders. Like I need you all to be supportive because your kids are going to tell you everything, like I need you to be on our side and theirs to help us to have more wins and be successful throughout the year. But mainly at the end of the year, I did get a couple of really nice emails from the parents just expressing their appreciation. And one in particular, this kid had a little bit of a harder time. I did not see it. I meet with all of them as an exit meeting at the winter break and then at the end of the year. And at winter break, this kid just kind of expressed she didn't feel like she really belonged here, which surprised me. She has friends. She's doing fine in the classroom. It was just, she just didn't feel like she was as smart, to be at Emory. And she was doing everything right. And everything was just kind of getting to her. It was a very tough transition leaving home for her once we talked through it. And so the spring came, I just kind of had closer eyes on this kid and our staff did, but she's never one to really complain or ask for help. And at the end of the year, her mom reached out with a really nice email just saying, it couldn't have been a better year. And she'd noticed a difference in her daughter, even at home over the summer, and how she's matured and kind of developed as just a person, as an adult. So that's kind of what it's all about in the end. Like, sure, we're giving them an opportunity to play the game they love and grow, but there's lessons in all of it, right? Every practice, it's okay, this is softball, but it's going to apply to your life, So the that was really touching in my first year from that kid's parents in particular, just because I know she had a tough time.
It's so validating to get an email like that, isn't it? Because I mean, we work so hard, and it's so easy for parents to point fingers when their child's not happy. Maybe they're not getting playing time. So when a parent can see the bigger picture and spends the time to draft an email to you, that really makes a difference. I especially like that you have parent groups and parent reps.
Mm-hmm.
I did that one year, and the parents took it to mean that they were responsible for feeding the team during tennis matches, because tennis matches, like softball games, are very long. Tennis matches are a little bit longer. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be out there for 6 hours sometimes. So, a parent's first instinct is feed, feed, feed. We wound up with so much food at our matches that season. I was like, no more parent reps. That was enough for us. But I love the idea of them having a place to communicate too, because one of the other things that I do is I do some coaching of coaches. A common theme that I'm hearing from these coaches that are struggling in their roles is this parent mutiny. One parent gets unhappy, then they communicate privately with other parents, and those parents, start scratching their heads and saying, yeah, my kid's unhappy with that same thing, and it spreads. It's a cancer. And that, of course, then hops over to the kids. Parent fuels the fire with their rage, and it becomes a really untenable situation for the team culture overall.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I love that you're keeping them engaged and that they have reps that have access to you, because I think that can really, really help. So before they get to college, and perhaps during college, when we're talking about parents and teaching values to their kids, what do you think are some of the best values that they've come in with now?
They're getting better with time management. And I don't think they come in with it. That's something that's kind of like just parenting in general. You can't really prepare. You have to kind of just be thrown into it and make it work. What they're doing a good job with is these kids now, they have a different style of communication, but they communicate, right?
Okay.
Like they don't necessarily use their words and their volume, but they're going to use their technology. And they are very social. And so they help each other out. They text and they have all the apps and the gadgets to have success and do everything. I mean, they have more apps that Emory provides and beyond than I even care to know. But I do think that they're doing a better job of like a teamwork and figuring it out and a camaraderie overall. Like they know who each other are before I even have a chance to introduce them because of social media, right? They make an announcement. They know all the kids who follow them or follow Emory, and they figure it out, right? Like they figure out who really likes Emory and who's going to be their teammate before I could even tell them. And so they start to kind of build on this relationship in the background, but without the coaches, just a very authentic way that they socially interact. And because of that, when they get here day one, of course, the freshmen are kind of lost and, feel this big, but they do lock arms and help each other more so than I would see in the past, so that's a positive. I don't think they have it figured out, but they use their texting and their gadgets and they all share location. And that's just like a cool thing they like to do. So it's like they figure it out a way to, I don't know if they think of it as productive as I see it being, but they are kind of locking arms and forming bonds and friendships and that accountability piece before they get here. Like they have a lot of respect. I mean, I didn't have an issue with a single kid, and I just meeting them and talking to them, I could tell like who has a lot more leeway at home and who doesn't, right? Like you can kind of tell that who's more disciplined and who's not. But the respect level is there for authority. They mess up, and a couple of them sometimes like would slip out a curse word or something, and I would say, hey, and they're allowed to do that at home. That's totally fine, but you're not going to do it around adults here or coaches, because overall that's not acceptable, in this world. So I didn't have any issues as far as them coming in, respecting authority and being, representing Emory and themselves in a positive light. those are kind of, I guess, a couple things that I didn't run into many hurdles or barriers with. And I thought I would. Again, they come from all different circles and they all molded pretty well because, like I said, they knew how to respect authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to an acceptable degree.
That's great. I especially love that you've taken that technology piece and really spun it in a positive way, or that the kids are spinning it.
They're doing it, yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, I hadn't really thought that through, but they are building family. Like they've created their own little network.
Oh yeah, they know who's the incoming tennis players, baseball, basketball. They find a way to connect on TikTok or this or that before they even get here, which is great.
Yeah, that's a really positive spin of social media, because we hear so often that social media is like ruining their social skills and distracting them from all of their work. But in reality, it sounds like there's some pluses as well. That's great. To kind of wrap it up, what advice do you have for our parents as they support their children and their goals to become a college athlete?
So a couple things. One is you got to put your kid in the best environment if you can, which means you kind of have to open your eyes. Recruiting is a business. And if they can think of it as their own career path, then it makes a lot more sense. Like I could work for Humana, for example, and work on a team that I love everyone on my team, and I can choose to stay on that team, or I can choose to shoot for that promotion. If I go to that promotion, that means I'm going to be on a new team, in a new environment. Is it worth it? So that's a decision as an adult I would have to make. So for the kids in recruiting for this team sport, they have to put their kid in the right environment. And a lot of times that means you have to leave the team that you're comfortable with, where all the parents get along and they've played with these same kids since they were 8. If they're ready for a promotion, you have to give them that promotion. And it'll be hard and tears may shed. But if their goal is to play at the next level, then they have to be on teams that are playing against other kids that are in that same light and have that same goal and are playing in front of the coaches. So a lot of times the kids are held back because they're not on that elite level team. And even though they have a good skill set, it shows once they go up against competition at that level, right? So when they come to camp, maybe they don't shine as much. They have the skill set, they're just behind. Mm-hmm. And individually, it's up to a coach. Okay, do you feel like you have the time and you want to put in that work to get the kid there? Or do you want to get the kid who could potentially help your team as a freshman? So that's one thing that I hope they listen to and can understand a little better. The other is in recruiting, like you are known. The parents are there. Like I said, they don't miss a game, right? Doesn't matter where it is. Coaches are aware of who you are in the stands. And, it shouldn't just be a facade when coaches come up that all of a sudden all the parents are on their best behavior. And then the coach walks back and then the parents are at the bench screaming at the umpires and in the coach's dugout and doing all of that stuff. Coaches can still see if we're not sitting right there next to you. And it shouldn't be a false behavior like that. They know how they should behave and what's expected. My piece of advice is to turn that on and leave it on instead of just behaving appropriately when the coaches are there. And again, this is all towards helping the kids, right? Let the coach coach. If you don't like the coaching, that's fine. You're not the one playing, but support the coach. And if it's not the right environment, you can help put them in the right environment, but let the coaches coach. It's the kids' opportunity to be recruited. So just let that happen and stay in the background. Now, when the phone calls come with the coach and, you're talking finances and offers, I do believe that parents have a place to be involved with all of that. Your kids are still minors. But as far as just like the behavior and the etiquette, right now, parents are just on their best behavior. And you can kind of tell, like, they're all quiet and not saying a word, which is not very organic or authentic. It's like, be yourself, but just behave the right way all the time, because your kids need to see that. The coach needs to see that. It shouldn't just be a facade, because it's the same with your kids. If all of a sudden they think they can just ramp it up 3 levels when the coach shows, that's just a recipe for success. They should be ramped up every time, regardless of who's watching.
Totally. Couldn't have said it better myself. To go back to your first point about getting them in the best environment for them, I find that to be more of a stressful switch when you're
Mhm.
switching teams for girls than for boys. Boys are just like, I'm out, peace, I'm going to a better team. And girls are like, but my friends, and I don't want to leave them. And at some point in time, if they really want to play at the next level, it's going to be necessary to move on and make new friends.
Make new friends. Yeah.
I love what you said about behaving all the time. And that's so hard, but it starts so young. And I do have
Mm.
parents listen from all ages. And if parents can just turn it on when their kids start playing their sport, at age 5,
Mhm.
easier to stay on, keep
Oh, yeah.
keep that pace going. But it's so tough when suddenly we're in college recruiting. You're like, oh my gosh, you mean if I'm hanging on the fence, that's going to ding my child? Yeah, it is. And you shouldn't have been doing it your child's whole entire playing career. And actually, it's not just about the coaching, it's about what you're doing to your child. And I've seen so many times kids come and play for me and they have to adjust the way they're looking. Like they're always looking in the
Right.
stands, see their parent versus looking to their coaches or looking to their teammates.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
just a real adjustment for them. So if we can start that for them at an early age, it'll be a lot
Mhm.
of transition.
Because that shouldn't be something that they're having, that they're like, going to college is hard enough without a sport. I don't know what that's like, but like when I think of what made it so hard in that transition, it wasn't as much on the field. Now, I'd never been coached that much in my life, but it wasn't really like on the field that made it tough. It made it tough leaving the nest, and being away from mom and dad and home and just familiarity. So it's like, you can make that easier. Your kid shouldn't struggle not having you to look in the stands, like at practices and games. But you're right. I hope you have some viewers and listeners that are like parents of 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, because I'm just going to tell you, it is it is a war zone at that age. The parents are absolutely vicious, and that's because those are their babies, right? And so to like they want to coach. And if the coach says run hard, they want to then use their voice to say run hard louder than the coach, and it's like it is a war zone. I've been to the tournaments and I've seen, and it's like I can't get out of there quick enough. I'm not recruiting, but it is a monstrosity. And I'm smiling and kind of being a little jovial about it, but it is really awful. And again, that continues. So, like at that age and such, that's actually where we gain our coaches in our sport. You have someone that graduates, you don't necessarily put them with your 18 and under team or your teenagers. We generally like to kind of mold them in. Okay, how about you take the 8 and under team or the 10 and under, because they're cute and it's fun and it's light. And that's also when we lose the most of our coaches, where they say, I'm not doing this, because the parents just absolutely kill them, you
Mhm.
know? And it's like, just thinking of our sport and growth, we need more coaches. Every sport needs more coaches. It shouldn't be the number one reason that coaches leave the game. It should not be parents. It just shouldn't be parents. And in our great sport, it is parents. So,
Yeah. Well, I think that's across the board. I think it's also the number one reason why referees
oh,
stop
absolutely.
being
Yeah.
officials. And
They get beat up. Yeah.
I mean,
Verbally abused.
it's obscene, the lack of respect. And then having a child see their parent disrespect an official, what is that doing for them in their future? You talked about how respectful your players are, but I guarantee you, if any of them had had a parent that was that disrespectful to an official, then they would have trouble later on being respectful to anyone that was in a
Mhm.
position of authority. So that's the most important message here. And we can probably end on that, is just modeling behavior for your child
Mhm.
is really essential. And modeling that positive and productive behavior is how you can singularly help your child to become a positive and productive student athlete in college and beyond.
Yeah. It's like when they're under your roof or off of that field, you're the boss. But you've got to understand that the sport, especially when we're talking elite level, they want to play in college. you've got to let someone else be the boss when they clock in for sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you need to teach them how to let somebody else be.
Right.
Good. Awesome. Well, thanks, India, so much for being here.
Thank you for the interview.
Hopefully we can talk again sometime soon.
Of course.
Thanks for tuning in for today's play. Join us next time to hear more insights from another outstanding coach. Until then, remember, as you navigate the ups and downs of your child's sports journey, you're not just picking teams, you're building character, fostering resilience, and creating lifelong memories.